feature presentation.
Welcome back to another Untitled Movie Review. I am one of your hosts, one of the Bat Boys, Matt Rohrbeck, alongside, he's allergic to tomatoes, but he is tomato meter approved, Eric Marchin.
Ready to go?
We're representing both Batmen.
Yes.
I didn't even plan this. I remember I have the shirt. I just like this logo. I like that logo too.
Yeah.
I'm not supporting the Ben Affleck era of Batman. I just want everyone to be. I want to be very clear on that. But
On the record.
on the audio listeners, Eric's wearing a Michael Keaton Batman 1989 era Batman t-shirt. I am wearing a Batman v Superman era Batman t-shirt. So
yeah. Classic Batman
Ooh.
and thick boy fat Batman. Batman.
Yeah. Yes, today we are reviewing The Flash. We're gonna start spoiler free. And then we're gonna go full spoilers because I feel like there's a lot to talk about in this movie. And I feel like having to dodge spoilers and things like that is almost impossible. But we're gonna give you brief thoughts of what Eric and I thought of The Flash, and then we're gonna go right into spoilers. But Eric, how are you doing?
Matt, we're talking about The Flash. How do you think I'm doing?
Yeah. Oh man, I'm ready for the DCEU to bid adieu to the DCEU. Because I'm with you, man. I'll just kick it off. Let's get right into this. Not that I had high expectations or high hopes for this film, Eric. I have been kind of out of the DCEU for a while. There's something that keeps bringing me back in. There's little things here and there. When James Gunn did the Suicide Squad, I was like, okay, that's a fun movie. I like this. There's things here and there. I like bits and pieces of certain movies. The Snyder movies, we've reviewed most of them. We did Zack Snyder's Justice League. We've done Batman v Superman. We've done everything in between, Man of Steel. It's been not even all over the place, just consistently not my thing, to put it nicely. We're huge Batman fans. You have a Batman tattoo. You love the 1989 Batman, so that'll be an interesting thing to get your perspective on. I don't hold the 1989 movie. I like it, but it's not necessarily, something I grew up loving. Like, I liked it, and I've seen both Batman and Batman Returns multiple times, but it wasn't necessarily that. My Batman era, weirdly enough, we'll get into, is the Val Kilmer, George Clooney Batman. Not saying that I love those movies, but those are the ones I remember as a kid. And then the Nolan era, obviously. And we're focusing on Batman, but weirdly, like, I have no attachment to the Flash. Like, in the comics, I never liked the Flash. Don't really care about the Flash at all. So I think we're going to be pretty Batman focused for some of this. But long story short, I was kind of like, okay, Keaton's coming back in this movie. The trailer, I think, was well done. I shouldn't have, I've been burned so many times. I probably shouldn't have been like, maybe they're reset. I like the Here's the thing. Never cared about the Flash. I like Flashpoint in the comics, which is very loosely based off of, which is a DC Comics thing where they reset the entire DC Comics universe through this story where the Flash travels through time and meets a Thomas Wayne version of Batman and changes the universe, and it set off to the New 52, which was a comics era that I kind of enjoyed in the last, it feels like yesterday, but it was probably over a decade ago or longer, 15 years ago. So that I kind of was hoping that this might be fun or this might be good. And I'm like, you know what? I'm here for a reset point, a movie that, whatever you feel about the DCEU, we're moving forward with James Gunn in control. He's taking some people who have appeared in the DCEU and some people who haven't. So maybe this movie will set it straight. Maybe we'll have a good vision of the future. We'll have a nice end point for the Snyderverse and the DCEU. And boy, was I wrong. I said it when we first saw the first Shazam movie, and you've been repeating it to me, where I said, oh my God, DC is back on its bullshit. And again, that's just kind of how I feel about this movie. And I should also say Christina Hodson, who wrote Birds of Prey, um,
And
I,
Bumblebee.
and Bumblebee, both movies I like quite a bit. And Birds of Prey is one of my, I think maybe my favorite DCEU movie, even over the Suicide Squad. So again, adding to those kind of expectations of going, maybe this will work. Um, I just had a miserable time watching this movie. Just an absolute miserable time. Everything from the VFX to the humor to how certain legacy characters are handled to just the general overall, plot. The use of Michael Shannon as Zod as the villain. I just felt like nothing in this movie really worked for me, and it was just a slog to get through. You laugh here and there. They throw a lot of different jokes because Ezra Miller's Flash is kind of more like Spider-Man in this universe, very quippy, very sarcastic, um, cracking jokes all the time. Um, I laughed here and there. The emotional crux of the movie, while sort of works, um, I could take it or leave it. I, you know, I understand the emotion, but I never felt any emotion watching it. It's too bogged down with the multiverse stuff and throwing all this crap at you that I think that undercuts the emotional core of the movie. Um, and I just, yeah, I don't know. It was unintentionally funny to me, whether it was laughing at the special effects or how the Flash, even though it tries to think it's clever and making fun of how he runs and stuff like that, but like it just looks stupid no matter if you're also pointing out that it looks stupid or if we're just laughing at how stupid it looks. But like, I just had a miserable time watching this movie, and I want to get to spoilers so I can go into more detail of why I had a miserable time, but I will leave it at that, where I did not enjoy this movie at all. I'm so over the DCEU. That's why I didn't see Shazam 2. I have, and I will say it here. I am not watching Blue Beetle or Aquaman 2. I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it. We're not reviewing them. I'm not seeing them. I'm done until James Gunn says, "Hey, okay." And I don't even trust him at this point. For anyone who went and said like this is one of the greatest superhero movies ever made, and James Gunn going, I liked it even before I became president of DC. It's like, okay, well, you only started talking about it when you became president of DC. And I'm like, I don't trust any of you. Any of you who saw it at CinemaCon or at fucking whatever, Tom Cruise, anyone. I don't
David
trust any of
Zaslav.
you. I never trusted that guy, but like, I don't trust anyone anymore. We talked about Secret Invasion. Where who do you
Who can
trust?
you trust?
I trust the Skrull who's impersonating someone more than I trust anyone who talked that this movie is great. And we talked, so I'll let you talk in a second, and
No,
we'll
go
talk a
off,
lot
King.
more.
Go off.
We talked about Spider-Verse and how it handles the multiverse so well and has this emotional core, and it's everything that this movie wants to be. And we said how some of these multiverse movies have learned all the wrong things from Spider-Verse, and this movie is that to a T. Is like, what did people like about Spider-Verse? Okay, let's just take all the most basic, simple multiverse shit and cameos and meta nods that make no sense and all this shit that like is just you know cheap pops and different things like that for the it's just lazy and not engaging, and I just I didn't I really didn't like it. Anyways, go ahead.
So you're not going to see Blue Beetle because it was announced that Blue Beetle is going to be a part of the DCU moving forward.
I don't know, man. Like I say this now, like I and I'm sure I will talk about it. Like I'm saying this now. Call me a hypocrite when I see those movies. I don't know, but like I didn't see Shazam 2, and I still haven't seen Shazam
You're
2.
not missing anything at
Um,
all, and I think you're a better person for it, Matt.
and that's why with and I like the kid from Cobra Kai. But I after being burned so many times, and I'm so tired. I
Yeah.
just I don't have the energy to want to see these movies anymore. And I'm like, I don't know, whatever James Gunn's gonna do. He announced his first slate, but like there are rumors that Muschietti is gonna do Batman Brave and the Bold, right? Like it's just so I don't know if I'm getting more of this. Like if I'm saying anything positive, like I didn't hate you'll get into Michael Keaton, but like I liked seeing Michael Keaton again. Um I think Sasha Calle is fine. She's just underused. Like I actually think she has some good moments and is showing some passion. And I felt more passion from her than anyone else who felt like they were just either cashing a paycheck or I don't know, felt like it was a obligation. Where I did feel some emotion from her and her sequences with Zod and stuff like that. But it's so quick and that's what I mean. There's so much in this movie that I just feel like it's all of it is so underdeveloped and it's just thrown at you with nothing feeling earned. And that's just uh its biggest problem. So anyways, I don't know. I right now I have no interest in seeing Blue Beetle or whatever, because like I don't even think that that's the start of James Gunn's DCU. It's like, no, until he's a producer on one of these movies and he is like involved in it, like you're just getting the excrement of the of the DCU, like the last little bit of like, well, we got to push this out and so we can clear everything before we reset. It's just like I don't know.
I love this side of you. You have become a true YouTuber in this moment, and it is incredible
Gotta
to
turn off
watch.
comments on this episode.
Definitely. I'm right there with you. I think the Flash is a microcosm of everything that's wrong with the DCEU in a nutshell, where it wants to have the emotional payoff and the catharsis that Marvel Studios has kind of built up over, the decades now, but it's in such a rush to get there that it undercuts everything that it's building towards, and it takes every shortcut possible to get there. And with this movie, the emotional core of this story is so hollow. And I think it's easier to say like the couple things that I did like about the movie, which is I think the opening credit is kind of playful and sets you up to think that, oh, maybe this is going to, you know exceed my expectations of what this could possibly be, and they're going to have fun. Sadly, they get to the baby shower scene and then that's completely dashed. The second thing that I do like, and I think the closest thing to a good performance in this movie, and an aspect that feels like the material is meaningful, is Maribel Verdú, who plays Barry Allen's mom. I think she is a wonderful, wonderful actor. And if you haven't seen Y Tu Mamá Tambien or Pan's Labyrinth, go check out those movies. She's fantastic in those films. And she does come the closest to giving a real performance, something that kind of makes you feel anything whatsoever. But I think the biggest frustration, and we'll get into this more with the spoilers, is that it's not only expecting you to know about the DCEU, it's expecting you to know about the entire mythology and history of, you know, not only DC Comics, but the behind the scenes of other DC movies that have been made and haven't been made. And so, you're going into this and it's just fan service 101, and it's the worst kind of fan service because it's working towards people that are complete diehards without inviting, anybody else in. And I said this as well with my thoughts on the Super Mario Brothers movie, but at least that film is a little bit warmer in its sort of conceit, where this is saying, okay, well, you're either on board with this or get out of the way. And that's not the way to approach something like this. And I'm not against the time travel conceit or rewriting certain aspects of it. I think that is actually interesting. It's just how it's visually interpreted and ultimately played out in that third act, which is abysmal, visually speaking. I mean, the whole film, the VFX are on par with Space Jam: A New Legacy in terms of just how awful everything is. It's either it looks like it hasn't been completed, or it basically feels like there's just something wrong with the projection, and you can say like, oh, maybe it's the theater or what have you, but there's just some effects that just do not work. And it is also very strange to watch a movie like this and to think, okay, you're entering another another world. Why not make that world close to what it was or what it is? Because Batman 89 and Batman Returns are Tim Burton movies, and especially Batman Returns, which really turns up that practical in-camera effects style with stop motion animation and kind of that weird Burton vibe. Why not embrace?
Miniatures and
Yeah,
like,
exactly. Embrace that. Do that.
like
Make
Spider-Verse does, right? Like, not to keep
yes.
comparing it, but hey
But
guys,
it's going to be
multiverse
hard not
superhero movie.
to. It's not.
Yeah.
I think that the comparisons are fair, and there is almost a 1-to-1 at times where there is that overlap. But when you get into the Keaton verse in this movie, and I'm not spoiling anything because it's in the trailers and things like that, it just looks like the Zack Snyder DCEU in
But with
Tim Burton's world.
yeah.
And that is, I think, one of the most offensive aspects, where it's like, you're not taking advantage of actually playing with the aesthetic and the style in a way that kind of makes you feel like you're out of this person's world and in another. You just kind of feel like you're in a muddled, ugly looking, saturated, completely corporate
well, I don't even-
synergy based universe.
And I don't even take it as they're in the Burton verse. I take it as they're in the Snyder verse, but it's a separate universe, separate than the 1989 Batman. But we've had the 1989 version of Batman in a Snyder verse this whole time, kind of thing, right? Like, so I don't. We'll get more into that in spoilers, but that's how I view it. I still think it's egregious and not not good, but like, it's I the way. Oh my god, we'll get into the spaghetti of it all, but like, I just yeah. Do you want to get into spoilers or what?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, I'm gonna give the movie a 2 out of 5. That's being sort of generous. I could even go down to like a 1.5. But I do not think, unless you're like the hardest of hardcore DC fanboy, whether it's the Zack Snyder movies, which you're probably already angry at us for, or the comic books, like really hardcore, have been a DC fan your whole life, like the fan service stuff might get you just for cheap pops, like I mentioned. And like, there are some action sequences that, I don't mind the Batman action sequences in this. I think all the Flash stuff was done better in the MCU or not even MCU, but in the X-Men movies with Quicksilver. And it's just, I don't know. I don't think you need to see this. But if you're listening to this, you're probably going to. So you're probably going to stick around for spoilers, or you've already seen the movie. So
I'm also going to give this a 2, with the caveat of saying that even though this is bad, it's still slightly better than the majority of the Zack Snyder movies. I think Man of Steel, his Justice League are absolutely terrible and almost unwatchable. And Dawn of Justice,
Zack
Batman
Snyder's
versus...
Justice League, not
yes, but both of them
Uh,
are bad. But I think
interesting.
they're bad for different reasons. The Justice League movies,
I
because I
feel-
think one's almost just don't release it at all. It should have never been released.
Yeah.
And then the Zack Snyder one is just self-indulgent and
I know.
also has a problematic nature, like the lead in this movie, and in terms of the history and the kind of online community embracing it. But in terms of movies within the DCEU, I think Man of Steel and Batman versus Superman Dawn of Justice are worse because they're overlong. This is overlong as well, but there's something about those movies that are truly exhausting and uncompromising in a way that I feel is just disgusting to get through. And that's where I feel defeated by those movies, where with this, like, it does have the coding, around it that is kind of okay to digest, which is
Right.
the nostalgia of it for me, which is
Sure.
seeing
With
Keaton.
Yeah.
But then we'll get into some problems while I have, because before we do that, but yeah,
Yeah.
it's 2 out of 5. Michael Keaton has always been my Batman.
Yeah.
I've always had a very strong connection to him as a child. He was a childhood hero. He meant a lot to me, especially like when my dad left. It was just something where I really gravitated towards that character and that performance, and I've always loved him as an actor. And so seeing him come back is like some sort of weird fucked up monkey paw wish, where it's like, yeah, I'm really excited about seeing Michael Keaton again, but then you take all the things that don't make sense in terms of applying like catchphrases and
Yeah.
exposition and even the way he behaves, and again going back to those the VFX, the way that he moves. Michael Keaton is a 71-year-old man.
I like those Batman sequences, but I agree.
You know, and that's the problem that I have with like the Burton verse or the Keaton verse of it all, is that it doesn't feel like it's authentic to what you're trying to represent as a character
I
and
just
as a
don't think it's
world.
the same Batman, right?
I
Like,
know,
it's just,
but there is still something very strange about
you're
all of
supposed
that.
to. The implication is that it is the same Batman. I get that, but
Yes,
like,
yeah.
yeah.
And to the point where it's just like, okay, like there's stuff in there where it's just like it just doesn't feel like you're really watching your Batman. You're watching a again, I don't like,
Frankenstein version of it.
yeah, like a corporate sort of mandated version of what this is, to the point where Keaton's performance kind of completely feels phoned in because he realizes, well, they're not really giving him anything to do with the material, so I'm just going to spout out the lines that people remember from that first movie that aren't really catchphrases. Like, let's get nuts isn't a catchphrase.
I know, it's just, but that's this whole movie in a nutshell, Eric. That cheap fan servicey stuff that isn't well thought out. It's not clever. It's not, earned. It's just literally spewing something at you. Going, it's the South Park episode of the Member Berries of like, remember this, and like, it's the worst pieces of our nostalgic culture of that we always want to like, and I'm guilty of this in many ways in other franchises and other movies. So call me a hypocrite, whatever you want, but there are ways to do it that feel earned or feel like you're paying homage or paying your respects to the history of a franchise or whatever you want to say. But like,
I wish there was a movie like that that's now playing, but there isn't, I guess. Across the Spider-Verse is not in theaters still, right, Matt?
And that's what I mean. That's why like this movie coming out like 2 weeks after it is baffling. This whole movie is baffling to me because again, it just learns all the wrong things from every superhero movie before it, and it is that like, remember this, or even remember this internet thing that most of you don't know, but here's anyways,
or look how cool this is. Remember the 1989 Batmobile?
Okay,
here it is.
all right, let's move on to spoilers because I can't hold it in anymore. I just can't. I can't. So I'm sorry everyone, we didn't like it, and we're gonna talk more about it for probably another 40 minutes or more of why we didn't like it. So let's get into the spoilers. Spoilers starting in 3, 2, 1.
And we're off to the races.
All right. Okay. I don't know where the fuck to start, like what the first spoilery thing is, but like, I guess we can talk about the VFX. If you want to go in order, do you just want to go straight to that last act? What do you
Let's just talk about what we want to talk about, and we'll get to whatever weird, because time is non-linear.
Yeah,
it's
like
right.
Pasta. It's a bowl of spaghetti. So like, oh my god.
The Garmonbozia of the DCEU is tomato sauce, which is ridiculous and very funny. But in a way that you're laughing at it.
No, I completely agree. I don't know where the fuck to start. I guess like the first baffling thing, when we touched on it in spoiler free, is the VFX in the movie, which like I said, like they've been screening this movie for a month or so or more, and they've been saying like, oh, this is an unfinished version, and the only thing that wasn't in there was the credits and the post-credit scene. And I'm like, all right, the VFX, because I talked to some people who saw it like a week or two ago or 2 weeks ago and before, and being like, ooh, the special effects were rough, but they said it was unfinished. So, and you see the movie and you're like, oh no, they never finished them. They never finished them. And I'm like that first sequence with the baby shower, which is what you brought up. And I agree with you that I thought it was bad. That's the first moment where I turned to Nevis and we laughed and looked at it and we're like, this is fucking awful. Like my wife, who has no connection to the DCEU, has barely seen any of them. And she's completely lost throughout this whole thing. So it's funny, like her leaning over and going, the fuck is Nick Cage doing here? Like, I was like, and I'm like, and I had to be like, I'll explain after. Cause like, it's such, so anyways, the baby shower thing looked awful. I agree with that. And then that's what I mean by any Quicksilver sequence, which we saw feels like a decade ago now, right?
Yeah,
Or
because it was in the
more.
early
Yeah.
2010s when they started them, and they milked those sequences for all they were
And they're
worth.
great.
Yeah.
Like the use of music and the use of how the time slows down and how Quicksilver's doing them. And you see this, and every time the fucking Flash is running like this, and fucking it looks so bad. And yeah, okay, you can make
That's
a
why
joke.
Tom Cruise liked it.
You can make a joke about that later, but okay, you can't make it look stupid and then call out that it looks stupid. Just don't make it look stupid. And like, so then you get this baby scene where I'm like, this isn't interesting, like him saving all these babies, and it doesn't look good. But then the most egregious thing to go on the special effects is when, you know, the Oscar winning sequence happens again, when Barry Allen the Flash enters the Speed Force.
Well, it's not
And
Oscar winning, it's the fans' vote.
I know, but like when he enters the Speed Force again, and you're seeing these he turns into a bubble boy, and he runs fucking stupid ass run into the Speed Force, and then he has to choose where in time he's going. So he sees all these moments from his history represented as these horrific Madame Tussauds wax people. Like, it's just they look horrifying and awful, and I'm like, I don't like Spider-Man. We just saw that again. Sorry everyone, we're gonna keep comparing it to that movie, but it came out 2 fucking weeks ago, and it's also a superhero multiverse movie that pays to its history and superhero movies in general, where they take the webs and they show you moments from comics and TV shows and cartoons and live action films, and it all feels like it works together and it doesn't look horrifying. And
All woven into one complete web.
And then the approach here is like, no, let's make everyone horrifying wax figures or CG monsters, where everyone's like, and they're just like this horrifying PlayStation 2 looking fucking CG characters, where I'm like, is this an intentional choice? Like, is this what the Speed Force that's your visual identity to the Speed Force? Because I feel like there's a way you could have used archival footage to somehow, even if it looked more flat, instead of, you know, having to pan around this horrifying PlayStation figure of these characters, where like I never understood why it looked so bad. And you're with me, I think.
Yeah, well, especially when you have in the third act,
Yeah, I mean, we can jump to that.
The multiple DC worlds colliding with the current one that Barry's in. That's where it reminded me the most of Space Jam: A New Legacy, where when, you know, Bugs Bunny is recruiting the Looney Tunes, and they're going from, you know, the Game of Thrones planet to the Superman planet, but this is all like the DC kind of version of it, and it's just basically selling you on, look at all this product that Warner Brothers has accumulated over the decades, and, you know, the franchises, and then it gets
Space Jam.
Yeah, and well, with this as well, this like just feels like,
again, all DC, but still,
yeah, but that's what it is. It's just like, oh, look at all this stuff that we have, that we've licensed over the years, and we're using it to the point of, you know, ethically, you know, questioning who we're showing in terms of that representation, with someone like Christopher Reeves, who has long since passed away,
Adam West, who recently passed away.
Yeah, and taking their likeness, and yeah, you can argue, well, their family probably signed off on it, and they get like a thank you in the credits and things like that, but there is still something about that, and we talked about it with Ghostbusters Afterlife a little bit as well with Harold Ramis, that it just kind of feels icky and kind of like this weird kind of like grave robbing kind of thing. And you know, there's been a lot of talk about this, I think, as of late with AI in general. So seeing this in the movie, and again, that likeness still is very similar to that Madame Tussauds waxy kind of quality that we see with, you know, Nick Cage as Superman battling a spider, which, you know, the backstory to that is when Nick Cage was going to be Superman in the proposed Tim Burton adaptation that Kevin Smith has always talked about, where, you know, producer John Peters, who's probably best known nowadays as the surrogate that Bradley Cooper plays in Licorice Pizza, wanting,
A mechanical spider.
Spider
Right? Yeah.
to fight Superman, and then ultimately that ends up in the end of Wild Wild West with Will Smith and Kevin Kline.
But a reference that literally this many people are going to understand.
Exactly. It never became a thing. Superman Lives never became a movie. So yeah, you're only pandering to the ultimate kind of like diehard fans of the DC comics and movies and memorabilia in general. You're not even, pandering to the people that maybe are more casual viewers, but still have seen everything else. So you really have to kind of know your history with that context. And then I think you maybe explained it a little bit here, but it is also a strange choice because wouldn't that Superman be in the 89 universe, because that is a Tim Burton based character as well? And so like I was thinking about that the whole time when
So
I
maybe
saw
that is the 89 universe, right? Where this Keaton is essentially in another parallel intersect of spaghetti where, everything is Zack Snyder verse, but it's just Michael Keaton instead of.
Well, it would make more sense as well, because this Bruce Wayne / Batman wears an ascot.
Yeah,
And
that's maybe your biggest telling sign, Eric, right?
Yeah,
Like
exactly. That, and he listens to Chicago. That was the one thing I was actually very surprised that they didn't do fan service for. Was so he listens to Chicago, which is one of the worst bands ever. Sorry, at me if you want to. I just think they're terrible. Like easy rock for people over 70. But I almost thought, it's like, well, if you're doing full fan service for the majority of this movie, have him listen to Prince, because Prince was a part of the Batman soundtrack. So it's like, well, and so you're watching this and you're thinking to yourself, and then just on an aesthetic thing again, let Michael Keaton be bald. Don't put a wig on him. Like
Right.
it just doesn't look right. It's off-putting. But yeah, his character is basically reduced to saying lines from the 89 movie, and then also kind of being not comic relief, but almost like the butt of the joke in a lot of ways, where it's like, what's a Superman? It's like a little on the nose, don't you think? And when he's talking about the Justice League and whether or not he's going to help, and the connections that they're making between Barry Allen or Barry Allens and Bruce Wayne kind of being cut from not a dissimilar cloth when it comes to losing somebody very close to them and how it kind of changed them. You get that at the beginning as well, where Ben Affleck's Bruce Wayne says, like, you shouldn't be meddling with this stuff because the butterfly effect and the scars that we have are what define us. Yes, exactly. I'm actually kind of surprised that didn't make an appearance in the movie, because it is owned by New Line and it is a Warner Brothers thing. So you're watching all of this and you're thinking to yourself,
Kutcher pops out, Barry, you fucked everything up.
You're watching all of this and you're thinking to yourself, okay, well, we're getting all this, Michael Keaton iconography that's being, shoveled down your throat and telling you how to love it. And you're just, at first you feel it just because it's been a while. It's been 30 years.
Oh, when
since
he
he's
puts
been
the
Batman.
suit on, like, it's great. Yeah, don't get me wrong. Yeah.
But then after that, even in that moment, it's kind of awkward. It's like they've already met Bruce Wayne in this before then.
But they never met Batman.
Sure. I mean, I the duality thing, I guess you can argue, but like it is kind of silly.
I agree.
And so you're thinking to yourself, okay, like that's great. And like one of the worst parts of fan service is like, okay, well, we need to have things that you've seen before. Again, iconography.
It's the remember this thing.
So let's bring the chuckle bag that the Joker had when he fell to his death, that Commissioner Gordon pulled out of the Joker's pocket when he was on the ground, and you're hearing that.
Yeah.
And you're just like,
why?
Come on, movie.
Why?
Come on.
It's the cheapest stuff. And that's what this whole movie is, though.
It is. It's cheap gratification. And you're also thinking to yourself, okay, well, I have this much movie left, and we still haven't been introduced to Supergirl, which has been a big selling point of, the marketing. And by the time you get to her, they undercut her story so much, and it's so underdeveloped, and she's also underutilized. So when you're watching, Supergirl go through. She's been captured. She was intercepted by the Russians when she first arrived here, and she's been basically locked up in this cell
Kind of a
underneath.
nod to probably Superman Red Sun, which is
Yeah,
a good
underneath
comic
the
strip.
Arctic for years and years and years, and now she's finally been released, and like her arc is just kind of skimmed through so quickly, where it's like, oh well, I don't trust humans anymore because look what they did to me, and then I'll
But
just go
now I
away
see
for a
Zod
couple
killing
minutes.
humans, and
Yeah, so now I'll come back.
now I understand that Zod bad guy, I good person. Like it's just like it's so
So
simple, and that goes back to the. I'll let just you
yeah,
continue. I
well,
want to
I
talk
was just
about
gonna say,
Michael Shannon too, but
yeah, I think the worst part of this whole movie is that it thinks it's doing something different when in reality all it is an origin story still. We're just going back to see how Barry became the Flash, but the difference is that they're using a kind of back to the future to framing device of the Speed Force to show you a Barry that's already been through it, kind of mentoring and helping a new Barry that hasn't gone through it yet. And once he inherits his powers, the older Barry, the experienced Barry, loses them. So it is just basically an origin story for the
yeah.
umpteenth time in one of these films.
Yeah, I agree with you. And then talking about the references, especially the Nicolas Cage, one, the movie relies so heavily on you understanding other DC properties and movies, which is a bad thing for a movie to do. Like Michael Shannon being the villain in this movie, even though he's barely a villain in the movie, relies so heavily on your understanding of that character from Man of Steel and his motivations in Man of Steel and what he's trying to do in Man of Steel that he's nothing in this movie, and he is the main bad guy in the movie, and I feel like he's barely a threat in the whole thing. And then you
Is
also
he
you
the
have
main bad guy
well, yeah,
though?
you have not it's not Reverse Flash, it's fucking Future Flash and like evil. It's anyways, I guess not, but the teases of that evil Barry throughout are kind of cool, but like um again, you don't it's so rushed at that final act, which is such an ugly ass thing, like you already mentioned with the worlds colliding and that Barry revealing himself, where Zod is the main villain for 80%, 90% of this movie. And again, unless you've seen Man of Steel, he's the most generic. And even in Man of Steel, it's not like I love Michael Shannon, and but at least he's given something in Man of Steel, right? Like we're here, and Michael Shannon's come out and said this, and I completely agree with him that it's just like you have to have seen that movie, and then maybe you get a little bit more from the villain because you understand Man of Steel and you can connect the dots there. But if you haven't, which many people probably haven't, if there's, I mean, maybe not many, but I underestimate when people see these movies that you don't have, not everyone's seen that Superman movie, and Superman's not in this movie. They don't think it has to have anything to do with that movie. But then Michael Shannon just becomes this generic, like, yeah, I need to find Superman or Supergirl, and just repeating stuff from Man of Steel where it just is like not interesting at all. Like that's going to be and then you're going to have a reveal of Barry going, he can't save Batman and Supergirl, so he becomes this fucked up fucking future Flash or whatever, and then breaks the space-time continuum, and you discussed a lot of the things, but I agree with you where the grave robbing Madame Tussauds PlayStation 2 characters universes smashing together, I just like, it's when I actually actively got angry at the movie. Like to that point I'm like, I don't like this, but whatever. Like I Michael Keaton, it's fun to see him again. I didn't think it was as egregious, right? But I don't have that connection to that Batman where I'm like, it's fine, whatever. Everything up to that point, I thought the action sequences were whatever. I thought the humor was whatever, but like I'm not actively going like I hate this. But when that sequence happens and you start to see the CG characters come in, and Eric, you and I love Nick Cage. Seeing Nick Cage in anything makes me happy. But
Except
except like this, where I'm like, like again, my wife was there with me, and she had to lean over and go, "Am I missing something?" And I go, "Yes." And she's like, "What? Why Nick Cage?" And I'm like, It's gonna take me too long. I'll wait to the after the movie, and I'll explain it to you." I was like, "Oh, it was like leaked photos when he did a screen test of him in the costume, and there was this whole thing where the mechanical spider that we eventually saw in Wild Wild West was originally intended for this Superman movie directed by Tim Burton, but it never happened. And you have to see these leaked photos, and everyone's like wondering what that movie would have been like. So then that's why and she's like, I'm okay. And and I'm like, believe me, I am too. Where I just like, that's such a reference that, yes, the most hardcore of hardcore DC fans will get and pop for. Probably it'll make Kevin Smith cry, but it's but but it's just so absurd of just being like, really, out of anything, that's what you're gonna reference. And then the cheap pops of like, the 60s Batman and the Christopher Reeve Superman are things that you guys liked. Christian Bale told us to go fuck ourselves, so we're not going to show the Nolan verse. Or Christopher Nolan was like, absolutely not. Like I just, it felt, again, cheap. And it just like, you're not going to do anything with those worlds. You just have this Frankenstein freakish version of these guys that have no um uh agency in saying they could be in this movie or not. And again, when we were talking off air, you brought up Ghostbusters, which is a movie that I liked, Afterlife, but I think I was still critical of the Harold Ramis stuff, where I'm like, I feel like it's fine to pay tribute to people who have played the character in the past and things like that, and I'm fine with using archival footage, photos, anything that they've already kind of done, where you still want to show a photo of Christopher Reeve or Adam West, or use footage from those shows in some certain way, like what Spider-Verse just did too, right? Like when you see Uncle Ben and stuff like that, like there are actors who have passed, but there's a respectable way to showcase them and honor them, where I don't think this is honoring them. It feels gross, and it just feels like cheap, and it doesn't serve a purpose other than going, remember? He was Superman. And you're like, yeah, but we're never going to see that from that perspective, because you're never going to make another movie with Christopher Reeve or another TV series with Adam West or whatever. And like, we never saw from their perspective anything like that it's just like, it felt kind of ridiculous and just there for the sake of going, it's a multiverse movie, look at these other DC universes. And then and I love time travel movies. I like the idea of the butterfly effect. You change the most minuscule thing, but it could change everything. Like, not the movie, but the idea of. Although I kind of liked Butterfly Effect when I was younger. Not a good movie, but like, it was always, I don't know. Anyways, and then you get. I don't know what else we're missing from spoiler territory. I guess we can just move on to the.
Well, I want to add something to the
Yeah,
Nick
please,
Cage
yeah.
of it all, because you mentioned also Butterfly Effect, and Eric Stoltz is in Butterfly Effect,
Oh,
and
right,
Eric
that
Stoltz
stuff
was
too.
where
Yeah.
this is also doing that same thing, but it's even worse because it's not DC related, but the idea of it trying to be clever with paying homage to Back to the Future and Back to the Future 2, but with that first movie, a lot of fans of that franchise will know that they shot the majority of the film with Eric Stoltz, and Robert Zemeckis felt that it wasn't working, and so they fired him, not because he did anything wrong, just because it just wasn't working, and then they reshot the entire movie with Michael J. Fox, and hence history was made. And so with this universe that Barry has entered, you find out that Back to the Future, which is made a reference to, also exists, but in this one it was with Eric Stoltz. And again, like, that's one of those things where, if like, even if you are a fan of Back to the Future, of the movies,
That
you
did
might not
hit,
know
dude.
it.
That in my theater, packed, just jam-packed opening night. I paid audience. Some of those references over everyone's head, dude. Like,
Yeah.
no one got it. Like, I
Yeah.
laughed at first because I went and then I'm like, oh no one understands this right now. Like, no one gets what this is referencing.
Yeah, and it's to the point where they don't just say like it as a one-off thing. They like go back to it as a sight gag, with one of the guys having a tattoo on his leg of Eric Stoltz as Marty McFly. And you're just like, wow, you are really just trying to hammer this home, and like,
And there's other
seeing like
references to
you're
like Kevin
so
Bacon
insightful and clever, and yeah, and like
Tom Cruise
Tom
and-
Cruise, and like, yeah, Kevin Bacon being in Top Gun, and it's just, it's like, okay, we get it, movie. You're playing with like the details of time travel, and how like one little ripple effect can change the entire sort of schematic system of everything. And so when you're watching this, you're just thinking to yourself, okay, how much time did Hodgson spend on just like, okay, how clever can I be here? Instead of like just writing a good movie, you're writing something where it's like, oh, I have to kind of, play with this or flip the script in a way, and it never feels earned, and it never feels fun. It's not clever or insightful, or it doesn't feel as though you're getting any kind of encyclopedic knowledge of the filmmakers, making a movie like this, and knowing they're saying that like, we know how to treat this material properly and with the respect it deserves. And it's like, well, no, you're not. You're just basically pandering to a certain group of people that will probably like it. I mean, again, everybody likes what they like, but it just kind of feels disingenuous to the rest of the audience. Instead of making a good movie, you're making a very niche film that is supposed to kind of be almost as broad as possible when it comes to blockbuster filmmaking. Ezra Miller's performances, they're fine in the film, I think, overall. The only thing I will say about their public persona maybe coming in a little bit is with the young Barry kind of being the way that Barry is portrayed. It's almost as though Barry is kind of affable and goofy in that Keanu Reeves kind of way,
Yeah.
where he, as in Barry, is almost more maniacal. And maybe it's because Ezra Miller was, best known for, Lynn Ramsey's We Need to Talk About Kevin, but it kind of comes off as like the Barry character, is
We got it.
almost as no, I just want to make sure.
I know you want to be clear.
It is. Pronouns are important. So, but Barry
when
is,
we're referring
is
to Barry
yes.
is a he.
Yes.
Ezra Miller, they, them. Yeah.
Yes. So Barry comes off almost as like a serial killer or somebody that's.
But then
going to
I think that's
murder you.
intentional, obviously, with how that character ends up, right? So, like, I think
true, but it does feel again like there's just this side of it that doesn't work, where they're trying to make you like that character, so that when he does become evil,
like heartbreaking,
and the way it's almost very similar to Hayden Christensen becoming Darth Vader, where by the time Anakin turns, you're supposed to be like, oh no, that's such a tragedy, but in reality you're just kind of like, he was an asshole.
Yeah.
It was horrible to begin with.
Yeah, I don't disagree there either. Other things to point out, I'm kind
Kara
of
dies.
Yeah, Kara and Michael Keaton.
Michael Keaton.
Just like those moments were unintentionally funny too, where like the Kara isn't as funny as the Michael Keaton stuff, but like Michael Keaton just like dive bombing the bat plane into
I'm gonna
like
take as many out with me as I can.
and then he just smacks into the shield and does nothing is like unintentionally funny.
Did the paycheck clear? Okay, I'm out.
Yeah, and then like they keep showing him dying over and over and over again. And
that line about like, I was trying to save you, you did.
Because he was a hermit, man. He was Batman once again, so he did.
Oh
save
man,
him.
this is killing me, man. I love Michael Keaton so much, and it hurts. It really does.
I agree with you. That whole last sequence, like I mentioned, I like some of the Sasha Calle stuff with Michael Shannon, but it's not. It again doesn't feel earned. Like her impassioned, like, what did you do? Like I thought that was all delivered really well, and like the fight sequences felt emotional and I sort of bought into it, but I didn't. Again, it relies on your knowledge of her and Clark, or her and Kal-El being cousins, and that, even when Michael Shannon reveals that the child did not survive or whatever, like that kind of stuff, I don't know, it just never feels earned. And I think that's the biggest thing in this whole movie. Like every single thing should have this impact, or like this shock factor or wow factor, and I just ended up rolling my eyes at most of it, and that is not a good thing.
Even when Barry sees his mom again, right? Like that's like another aspect of where like that final scene of him having to make the decision to put the can back, the can of tomato sauce back. And this is why I think someone like Maribel Verdú is such a good actor. Yeah, even though again it's not emotionally strong in any way, but she's doing her best to make the material sound less than arch. And so that moment is really all on her, giving more than what is necessary or required for that scene. And so, even when you have people at the beginning of this introduced, you think like, oh, how much weight am I, or how much am I supposed to know about Iris West, at the beginning of this, or how much am I supposed to
She was
really
cut
care?
out of Justice League, but then showed up in Zack Snyder's Justice League, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah,
then,
and then like even the recasting of Billy Crudup with
yeah.
Ron Livingston, like because you heard about it in the production, because it was just a scheduling thing. But then also when you're watching it though, you kind of maybe are thinking like, oh, is this
Yep.
also a part of the multiverse?
Because you've set up this universe of being like, well, someone could be changed and a different actors playing the same role or something, so that becomes a little tricky. I mean, Marvel has the same issue and they've recasted a couple people too, but that was a decade ago in a movie that wasn't about the multiverse, right?
Yeah.
So when you have a movie about the multiverse and now but I bet you most people don't even notice that it's a different actor, right? Like,
No.
again, like I don't think people, again, we're in this bubble that do understand the Nick Cage reference, but and understand the Back to the Future references. But then that's obviously that something Andy um, Muschietti thinks that people, or doesn't care. Maybe he's writing it for film dorks and DC
Well,
dorks
he
and
didn't
things
write
like
it though.
that.
That's the
So I
thing.
mean, not
So,
writing it, sorry, but
but
like
but yeah, making the move. I'm sure he had a
part
lot
of
of
it.
input on it though, as
Yeah.
well.
It
So.
was written by Hodson, and yeah, I understand that she was probably a huge part of it, but usually working with a director to what to include and what to not include and stuff like that. So I guess that's what I mean. But yeah, and I don't know, like what do we miss any other universes? You see the Reeves universe, the West universe, the Cage fake universe, and that's it,
There's
right?
an
Like you
early
don't.
Flash universe as well, where there was like a
Oh, you see,
serial
like,
series when he's
and
like,
they show
yeah,
that TV Flash, right? Or
yeah,
like, we didn't see any CW network shows or anything
no,
like that.
as it was meant to be, keep them separated. But I do believe Ezra Miller
Appeared,
appeared on the
yeah.
CW version at one point.
So it's out there. It's one of those bubbles that was colliding, but
Yeah,
we're like, we don't look at the CW
Bubble Boy.
universe.
I guess now we could talk about the Clooney of it all.
Yeah. So the movie ends on another twist where Barry, resets his universe by putting the Garmonbozia back on the top shelf. And then his dad looks up because he's got to grab the top shelf and he clears his dad's name. Barry thinks that won't cause a butterfly effect, but obviously did not learn anything from the rest of the movie.
Idiot.
like he's, after all of this, where a future version of him has like fucking hook arms and like comes out and he's like mutilated and
Looks like
fucked
Doomsday
up
a little bit.
and um he doesn't learn anything and he's like, I'm, you know what, let me just try something else. That can't hurt, right? And then who knows what other stuff he fucked up, because he goes back, his dad is found innocent in this retrial that they were doing through the lamest, like, through new Wayne tech. It's like, okay, like, all right, cool. They
Clean
find
that footage.
his dad looked up because the tomato sauce was on the top shelf. So then Barry leaves the courthouse. Bruce Wayne pulls up in the same car that Ben Affleck. We didn't even talk about Ben Affleck or Gal Gadot or
Oh God,
awful
Gal
Batman
Gadot.
costume.
Okay, Gal
Awful.
Gadot now feels like she's just jumping from one movie to another because she's not going to do Wonder Woman 3. So she was in Shazam: Fury of the Gods in like
I
5
heard
seconds,
that,
and
yeah.
brings back, spoiler alert, brings back Shazam at the end of that movie, resurrects him, and then pops in here momentarily. He's like, "Hey, see ya."
Yeah. And
Oh man.
Ben Affleck's Batman costume just awful in this movie. Looks awful. Anyways, to the end of the movie, you think it's Ben Affleck gonna pull up, and then it's fucking George Clooney. Which, if there's a metaphor for this movie, is like, hey, we fucked everything up so badly that the dude from the worst Batman movie is here now. Like, he's just, I love George Clooney. I love him. It's not necessarily his fault that Batman and Robin is so bad,
Well, I mean, he is a terrible Bruce Wayne. No. He's a good Bruce Wayne because at that time he kind of fit the bill
Yes,
of being like
yeah,
that playboy type.
yeah.
Terrible Batman. Terrible Batman.
And I don't disagree with you. But I think like it's just such a funny punchline for this movie that you're like, no, it's George Clooney now. You fucked everything up so bad that it's George Clooney now, and
He's
you're like,
offering the Flash an espresso.
yeah, and he's acting like he's been the Batman in Barry's universe the entire time, right? So now they have to remake all the Zack Snyder movies with George Clooney in them, and that's what we're gonna get. So
Wearing
post
that
credits,
suit.
did they
Ugh.
have the post credit scene for your screening? Because I know a lot of the pre screenings didn't have it.
Well, the pre-screening that I was at was Barry and Arthur,
Yeah, they
Aquaman,
had that. Yeah, so
hanging out, getting drunk, and and in the Keaton verse, we learned that Arthur, Aquaman was never born, but
yeah,
his dad
Boba
has a
Fett
dog
is
named
there.
Arthur.
Yeah, and Boba Fett's there, and Tamora Morrison's fake teeth.
Yeah,
Um,
I never
um,
had a son. You
uh,
mean Django?
yeah. So then we get
Boba?
this scene with Arthur and Barry. Arthur just getting shit faced. Him falling in the puddle and going, "This is where I live," is kind of funny, but like a kind of a nothing post credit scene. Like I know they didn't have this scene for a lot of the pre screenings, but I
Why?
I guess the one piece that you get is maybe Barry has also been jumping through time more again because he goes, every universe I go to, the Batman was different or something. Like, and I don't know if he's just referencing Ben Affleck, Michael Keaton, and now George Clooney, or if he's gone to more things and seen that the Batman is different in every universe. So I don't even know if the one we're seeing at the end with Arthur is still Clooney or whatever. Did they reset it again? Like it's kind of confusing, but it's kind of a nothing scene. It's almost just like Jason Momoa is still here and Aquaman's coming out. So it's just like, oh, okay. Like this is kind of a nothing sequence. I thought you were gonna like add something to it,
Yeah, I
but
would get it if the scene with Clooney wasn't included, just because it kind of feels like the most spoilerish, and
and
this
I
is
never
kind of
had it spoiled, so I mean, good
I
on
didn't either.
that.
I didn't
But
either. But this is what I do want to get into a little bit in terms of like looking at the future of the
well, that's
DCU
the movie.
now.
We can get into that. Yeah.
Yeah. So, do you honestly think that George Clooney is going to be the Batman for Batman Brave and the Bold?
I mean, uh, yeah, because like I don't see who else it would be because I do think they're going to go the route. They're the rumors, and again, we're in that nerdy bubble that sees the online photos of Nick Cage in costume, right? So we read the rumors that uh, Andy Muschietti is coming back to do Batman Brave and the Bold, and that there are rumors that they want it to be a former Batman uh, that we already know that it finds out he has this kid in Damian Wayne, and there's that relationship, father son relationship is the crux of that movie. If you want it to be a former Batman, I don't think you're gonna have Ben Affleck. Like you're not doing Keaton. There was the rumor that Keaton was going to be the Nick Fury moving forward for the DCEU, but that doesn't look like it's happening now, especially with how this movie ends. And I bet you the original cut of the movie had Keaton coming back instead of Clooney at the end there. Like that's what I assume, right? When they were still going to
Right.
continue with Keaton being the kind of thing that's tying everything together. I really think that was probably a reshoot where someone said, okay, let's bring Clooney in, and maybe there's already a deal. Like we'll find out, I think next week, I think like after the movie's release, because you're already seeing with the Transformers spoilers for the end of Rise of the Beasts, if anyone cares, but who cares? The G.I. Joe stuff. There was that article on Entertainment Weekly, I think, where Stephen Caple Jr. came out and talked about how he planned this for a while and he wants to do this G.I. Joe crossover with Transformers, and that he's already writing the script for that movie. So, like, I wouldn't be surprised if this movie does well this weekend. We get that official announcement that Andy Muschietti's coming back and doing Brave and the Bold, and that Clooney is that Batman, because, or else I don't know why you end, like, if Ezra Miller's Flash is going to continue on in the DCU moving forward, and if this
Or
movie does,
DCU now, because it's
that's
just
what I said, yeah.
yeah.
Then I see that this movie being that reset point, right? And what else has changed? It looks like, but then there's the rumors that Momoa, it was going to play a different character and not Aquaman. So like
Lobo.
it gets confusing, right? So I'll let you go, but I don't see, because you're not getting Christian Bale back. Like, obviously Val Kilmer is not, but like, I don't know who else. You're not going to have the Robert Pattinson one in that movie. They've already said that that is a separate universe, and there's another universe they didn't show because like Matt Reeves is probably like, no,
Nah.
it's okay.
Don't
It's
involve
okay.
me in this.
It's okay. Let's just keep it separate. Let's just
gotta keep them separated.
Maybe not, maybe no.
Yeah.
And so I don't know. Like, I know you said his age, but I mean, look at Al Pacino and Robert De Niro lately. Like,
Well, I mean, Clooney
they're
also
popping
has
out.
twins, right? Like, he has
Yeah.
young kids.
But yeah.
But that is the center of the story, right? Because Brave and the Bold is about him raising. Is it Damien?
Yeah, Damien and Bruce's relationship.
Yeah.
And him as it's a Batman and Robin movie again. So there's, you know, it's,
God,
there's
no!
there's some tie-ins. So I don't see, unless you go with another new Batman. But to me, I think they might want to go the route of redeeming, like, because Clooney is a likable guy, and I think if you get a good young actor with him, maybe you can. And if people like this movie, which seems some people do, maybe you do something with that. I don't know.
But does Clooney want to do it though? Because I could see like Clooney doing this as just like a bit part, kind of, because he's always made fun
then
of
why
Batman and Robin. Well, he's always made fun of Batman and Robin. He's always had a cheeky sense of humor.
But then maybe he wants to redeem that.
I know, it just seems almost though that like he's kind of moved past like getting locked into a franchise now and wanting to make his dull directorial efforts, you know. Like,
I don't know if it has to even be a franchise. You could even go the route of doing one Batman Brave and the Bold movie, and maybe you wouldn't do a time jump, or maybe you would, because you could have Damien as Batman, like in the DCU. You don't have to. You've done so many Bruce. Like, there's also the Dick Grayson Batman with Damien, which was actually a pretty fun part of some of the comics. But I don't know. You think they cast someone new then? Is that what you think, or what?
Well, a little younger, because if they want to, because Clooney's such a big movie star as well, right? Where like, again, like he has other things that he's doing, you know, selling Nespresso and directing films and things like that, that it kind of feels like, oh, well, you're not only going to be doing this one thing, you're also going to be our Batman,
it's a shared universe,
in a shared universe with the DCU moving forward. So it almost feels like, yeah, like Affleck or Bale would have made the most sense, and neither one, I don't think, wants to do that moving forward, even with Gunn now kind of
but is Batman going to be a big part of James Gunn's?
Well, that's the other thing as well,
like,
right?
Maybe it's just that movie, and Damien is going to be the thing that is going to be the crossover part, right? Like, or maybe Clooney is going to do mostly what they were going to do with Keaton, and be the older Batman who had his time already, because we already have the Matt Reeves Batman movies for a younger Batman thing. So why not do something different? Maybe you eventually get the Batman Beyond movie we were maybe going to get with Michael Keaton, but you get it with Clooney instead. So I don't know. Like, I just don't. I can't fathom them casting another new Batman. You know, like, I just don't see it. And if you're gonna do this, like, older Batman who finds out he has a young son kind of thing, like, I think you probably go with Clooney. He's the only one that kind of at this point makes sense, like, unless you go back to Keaton, but I don't think you're gonna do that.
It would be great if it was De Niro or Pacino as Batman.
They're like,
Very
hey,
funny.
they're still popping out kids at 104 or whatever they are. So like, it's
Late
just,
70s, early 80s.
I know, but like, there's like Al Pacino impregnated his 29-year-old girlfriend. You're like, oh no. Like,
You know, the funniest thing, I could just see it now though, like there being a scene in Batman the Brave and the Bold. It's like, son, let me tell you the story when Dick and I fought over poison ivy and I fought a frozen dude from Austria.
yeah. Does Chris O'Donnell come? Is it Chris O'Donnell?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because Chris O'Donnell was the one. See, that's also really interesting as well, because it's like, okay, is the Batman universe that Val Kilmer was in the same as the Clooney one, because they were both directed by Joel Schumacher, or are
Yeah.
they separate?
Which
Because
were technically originally conceived as just like James Bond, where they were like the same Batman as Keaton's Batman, right?
yeah,
Moving
and they
on.
were chapters, because
Yeah.
you also had, other actors kind of appearing in them
Yeah.
all, like Michael Goth specifically, and Commissioner Gordon, and so like you had these people, Pat Hingle, like you had
Yeah. They
these
took
other
the James
character
Bond
actors.
approach
Yeah,
more than
like
like,
Judi Dench, right?
yeah. So I don't know. I mean, I don't think it would be the same universe, but you could bring back actors and have Chris O'Donnell be more, maybe Nightwing or a more adult. Like he does take over the Batman mantle at one point, but like, I don't think you're gonna do that. Maybe he
It'd
has
be amazing
yeah,
if he came back to do another like laundry scene. Do you remember that sequence where he's like doing
yeah.
the laundry and
Oh
he's
yeah, yeah,
then
with his like his sticks or whatever. Like, I I don't know. Like, I think we're at that point now where you could reference Batman and Robin and try to do something serious, and people think that's cool, right? Like a redemption kind of thing. Of that movie is so bad, like entertainingly bad in my opinion. Like I love
I
hate
think it's
watching
better
that
than I
movie.
actually think it's better than Batman Forever, which Batman Forever is just kind of boring.
Yeah,
Where
like
Batman and Robin is bad,
because it's
but it's
a
kind of
live action
fun.
cartoon. It's
Yeah, but
like
it's kind of
it's
fun to laugh at it.
Oh, absolutely. And I agree where Forever, I like Jim Carrey in that movie a lot, but I agree with you at the movie as a whole. Um Batman and Robin is so absurd that it's fun to laugh at. So I think if you ripped those characters out of that and set it many years later and tried to do something more quote unquote serious, um could be interesting. I don't know. Like, and again, I've talked a lot of shit about this movie and said I'm done with the DCEU. And that would be a continuation. Like, that's what I'm so confused about moving forward with James Gunn. Is just like, it seems like they want to have their cake and eat it too, where they're just kind of like, we're resetting. It's going to be completely new. But then you're like, oh well, okay, you have the Suicide Squad people coming over and Peacemaker people coming over, and then you're like, well, we might continue with Gal Gadot and Ezra Miller and Jason Momoa, and we're just replacing Superman and Batman, but we might bring back an old Batman from a non thing. So it like, and I get that this movie maybe the consequences of it is going to be like it scrambled everything, right? So that's how you not scrambled eggs, just scrambled spaghetti. Um that's why characters from different DC universes get dropped into this one, right? And then it is that kind of that's what the new DCU is like there's going to be a bunch of new people. There's going to be some people you liked from the Snyderverse, and then there's going to be some people from the history of DC. And I guess that's I don't know. I like James Gunn a lot, and I hope he has it in him to somehow make all of this work. But I I don't see it right now. And like even that announcement of those first films that are coming out from the DCU, the God Chapter 1 Gods and Monsters or whatever it is. Um I
Well, it should be called Gods and Monstars with all the Space Jam references we've been making.
yeah, so I don't know. I just can't see you casting another new Batman. I just don't see it.
It's still going to be confusing. I think that's ultimately what it comes down to. It seems very convoluted right now in terms of that cherry picking quality of like, okay, well, what is canon still? What isn't canon? Who's crossing over? And then, yeah, if you get Momoa playing somebody else, that's also going to be very weird because you still have two DCEU movies left this year with Blue Beetle and the Aquaman sequel, Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom. And also, like, even, hearing James Wan recently saying, like, yeah, it's really confusing to keep up with all of this stuff and, like, what they're telling me in the reshoots for that movie. And I think Ben Affleck's supposed to be in that film as well. So,
In which one?
In Aquaman.
Oh, yeah, because they
he's
replaced Keaton's scenes with
yeah.
Ben Affleck, right?
So is that going to take place
Wait,
before
yeah, or are they
the
going to reshoot
Flash?
them for a third time with Clooney? Like, is it like...
Because if you go on, again, IMDb is not a perfect, source. It's not always accurate, but right now Affleck is attached to Aquaman, the Lost Kingdom. So maybe they'll say, like, oh, this takes place like a week before the events of the Flash, or something like that. See, it's so confusing. It's so dumb. It's so dumb.
All right, everyone. Thank you all for listening or watching. It was fun. More fun to talk about than to watch, I think. Which, again, I will take one of these, I guess, that is like that's memorable or fun to talk about over than something like, I guess, Transformers or Bumblebee or something, or not Bumblebee, Transformers Rise of the Beasts or things like that are just kind of middle of the road forgettable, but only because they're more fun to talk about. Like, that's it.
Yeah.
Like, it was still kind of a miserable experience to sit through, but sometimes you go, well, at least I'll have a fun conversation with Eric about it, where, like, even that, just to finish everything off, like when you talked about the Zack Snyder stuff earlier, I don't know how I feel, because I disliked this movie more than Batman v Superman and Zack Snyder's Justice League, but it goes back to a similar opinion I had about Transformers Rise of the Beasts, where, like, the singular vision, even though I don't like the singular vision, I almost appreciate more than just the cheap kind of thrown references in this movie. And like like, whatever you want to say, like, Zack Snyder's movies were Zack Snyder's. And, like, to me, they were memorable because of that, much like Michael Bay's Transformers movies, where I don't like them. I want that to be clear. I do not like Justice League. I do not like Man of Steel. I don't like Batman v Superman, but I almost prefer them over something like this, even though I think this is more fun to talk about, just because I always appreciate someone, just even if I don't like it, that I don't like all the bullshit online. We've talked about that stuff. Remove all that crap. But just as the movies, I don't know. Like, when the Aqua people are singing as they as in Zack Snyder's Justice League, as Arthur's walking into the water, hilarious. And, like, it's that kind of a batshit, no pun intended, like, stuff in his movies that is so self-serious and so like, I'm the second coming of Kal-El, that I just, like, is like, I almost am just like, good for you, bro. I hate these, but I mean, at least I feel like with this, I just feel like it's this hodgepodge, like, nothing, even though it's absurd and I don't like it, but it's just I don't know, more offensive to me. I have no idea what I'm talking about.
See, I don't necessarily disagree with you, where, like, I think it is more interesting to talk about this, and even the Zack Snyder movies and the Zack Snyder films are more singular in their vision, and you feel like you're getting, like, a inside peek into this man's brain.
Yeah.
But I think I just didn't care at all about Batman versus Superman or Man of Steel or Justice League, where there is that attachment for me
Right.
personally with the 89 Batman and Batman Returns, that there's something where, maybe because I find it more offensive, but, like, I have a slight interest in it, where I can remove myself from the Snyder films because they're just, they suck, and I'm almost apathetic towards them. But they do kind of have this numbing quality in general,
Yeah.
where this isn't numbing, this is more infuriating.
Yeah.
And that is a feeling more so than the Zack Snyder movies.
That's fair.
And that's something I can kind of, I guess, use
Yeah.
in some way.
I understand. Either way, we're in a nightmare. So
Yeah.
it's just like, I'm ready to escape this nightmare. Will I see Blue Beetle? Will I see Aquaman?
Probably. Let's be real.
I know. I say this now, but, like, Shazam, I really did not care about. But, like, I did see the first Aquaman movie, and I guess I saw the first Shazam movie, and I like Jason Momoa enough. I guess I'll say that. And I like, is it Zolo something from Cobra Kai? I always get his name. I forget his name, but from Cobra Kai, I like him. So like, I guess I like the actors in those movies more than I like Zachary Levi. So like, I don't know. I'm just so exhausted right now from it that I'm like, I can't. But we'll
After
see
you
in a couple
watch
months.
Aquaman: The Lost Kingdom, you'll be like, I'm done with this. I'm done with this. Like, don't worry, Matt. It's over now.
But is it? But is it?
No, it's not. It's going to be a hybrid thing, like you said. Like it's also going to be more confusing moving forward. I think like it is going to be like, okay, so this isn't a reboot, but it is. It's a soft reboot.
They remember certain things, but they remember Clooney's Batman now, not Ben Affleck's Batman.
If it is that, because who knows if Ben Affleck, maybe because of the Aquaman, like who knows, Matt. It's a bunch of spaghetti with red sauce poured all over it.
If you want to see more of my work around the internet, Family Feud Canada, UntitledMoviePodcast.com. You can follow all my rantings over on Twitter at Matt Rohrbeck, and please go drop us a like, a follow, a review on podcast services, a thumbs up on YouTube. We appreciate all that kind of stuff. And then head over to our letterbox where you can find everything, which is Untitled_movies.
And I'm Eric Marchand. You can find more of my video reviews on rogerstv.com/cinemascene.
And on Twitter at EM6211.
Oh, no? Yeah. I just gave up.
Until next time.
I'm tired. I'm really tired.
I'm making weird running faces and movements. Gotta go fast.